As a fearful avoidant attachment style, you probably sabotage things in your life more than you care to admit. In other words, you say you want something and you intend to stick to doing something that's good for you, but you find yourself faltering, maybe over and over again. Well, in today's video, I'm going to break down exactly what is really going on behind the scenes when you self-sabotage and exactly the antidote that is required for you to break this pattern almost immediately. This is about the concept or idea of individuation, of actually really behaviorally developing and identifying a strong sense of self, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. This is vital if we want to feel confident in our dating decisions, in having boundaries and having standards for ourselves. This is absolutely a necessity if we want to have a strong sense of self-confidence, personal self-empowerment. If we want to get out of these cycles of rumination, worrying so much about what other people think, of fearing rejection so much, if we want to escape from all of those things, individuation and learning to properly individuate and understanding what that means, which I'll explain all of to you in this video, is one of the essentially prerequisites. It's like one of the necessities to get there and to shed some of these really painful experiences of what life can feel like, especially from an attachment perspective, if we don't have the ability to properly individuate. Individuation essentially means, and it's a behavioral stage of development, it essentially means learning to develop a healthy sense of self. And a healthy sense of self cannot ever be identified or derived from the outside in. Okay, so if you are deriving your sense of self based in what other people think of you, what their opinions are of you, what they think you should do about pivotal choices in your life, for example, your parents tell you you should be in XYZ career, and maybe you really want to be in this career over here, but you're like, you know what? They think I should do this, right? So you go in that direction. You're deriving your sense of choices about a pivotal area of your life based on what people think around you that you should do, especially people who you may look up to or put on a pedestal, somebody who represents some sort of authority in your life. If you learn to derive your sense of self from the outside in like that, if you're making choices in all 7 areas of your life, whether it's to do with your physical health, whether it's to do with your career, whether it's to do with the decisions you make in the financial or money area of life, whether it's your thoughts, opinions, views about things, whether it is the way that you regulate your emotions and what you should feel about different situations or experiences, whether it's about the types of relationships you're in and the types of people that you're with, if you are deriving your sense of decision-making process from the outside world and the people around you's point of view, parents, friends, family, especially this tends to relate to authority figures. So people we put on a pedestal. It can even be like if you're dating somebody in a relationship and you just put them on this huge pedestal because you think they're so smart or so amazing. And so you allow them to always have the right decision for you. Anybody that you've made the authority in your life, if you are, and here's the really clear difference, there's a difference between taking on an opinion from somebody else. Okay. So somebody you're dating says you should be in this career and you don't care about that career. You're not interested. In fact, every fiber of your being is disinterested in that career, but you're like, oh, they're really smart and they know me well, so I'm going to go back to school for that thing. If you're doing this, okay, you probably haven't had enough of an experience of individuation yet. And what is inevitably going to happen is that you are going to find yourself in situations you don't like, in situations where you later might find, unfortunately, that you have some kind of regret around because you're going, wait, like I should have thought that through more, or I should have done my own research about this, or should have looked into what felt right for me. And this is where there's a really pivotal and important difference in our lives between accepting an opinion from somebody around us versus forming our own opinion. Now, let me be clear. You don't have time as a human being to form an opinion about everything. You can't form an opinion about, which mountain is the most fun to hike if you can't go hike all these different mountains, right? Or climb all these different mountains. You may not have time to do those things, but when it comes to important decisions that affect you directly as a human being, in other words, career, financial, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, and relationship. So these really pivotal 7 areas of life. If we don't take the time about the most crucial decisions that we can make in each of those areas to form our own opinions rather than just accept the opinions of the outside world, then what we're essentially continuously trying to do is to derive our sense of safety from the outside world and from other people's experiences and opinions. Now, you can clearly see, hopefully, from this discussion so far, why that could never possibly be of the highest standard for you, right? Like what works in somebody for their career may have nothing to do with what would work for somebody else, because we each have different, unique programming, right? We have our individual beliefs and opinions and needs and ideas and programs that will either light us up in a specific area of career or make us feel really down and unfulfilled. And that same idea applies to the financial area of our lives. For one person, money may equal freedom and pleasure. For another person, money may equal safety and security. What somebody does with their money might be different from what somebody else wants to do in their lifetime with their money. And as you go through these major 7 areas of life, career, financial, mental is like our thoughts, opinions, ideas. If you're deriving your sense of like views on life from just your parents and you never question them, that's going to be problematic. If you are deriving your way of emotionally regulating yourself and making your own physical health decisions, because health can never just be a one size fits all experience, similar to like our mindset programming, we just have such unique individual situations there. And through relationships, what we want, what our standards are, what our non-negotiables are, what our needs are, like all of those different things are unique to us. And part of healing and becoming securely attached means ending this idea or concept of trying to derive what the right versus wrong thing is by looking at collective opinions and ideas. We can tap in there, we can listen to what's going on out there, we can take those things into consideration, but we also have to be making decisions from a place where we are able to also consider ourselves, what our unique needs are, what our unique perspective and feelings are, or boundaries are, or requirements are, or desires are in each of those major areas of life. Now, if we don't have a strong relationship to ourselves, and if we are constantly deriving what we should be doing from the external world, from the collective, and in essence, deriving our sense of security and stability from the collective, from our external world, that will always lead to us feeling insecure and unsafe. Why? Because the outside world is forever changing. The only greater space you have while our inner world is changing, it's not changing as rapidly and as quickly, and there aren't so many conflicting and ideas and opinions and points of view in the outside world as there is from our inside world. And if we don't have the capacity to learn to navigate our inside world by taking ourselves into consideration and introspecting there and developing our own inner sense of compass and morals and understanding about what we need and what's important to us in those 7 areas of life, what inevitably happens is we keep trying to derive our sense of self and self-identity from the outside. And this is where you will experience that people's opinions of you just have such a capacity to harm you or affect you, rather than you feeling kind of like, oh, I don't really care too much what people think. Like, I'll consider people's criticisms or like pay attention or see if there's something I can learn from them, but they're not like landing on you like they're like, just cutting you deeply, right? That won't happen if you're individuated more. We won't be in a space where we constantly ruminate and worry about what everybody else thought around us. We will be in a place where we have a healthy sense of stability and security in our lives as a baseline that is untouchable and unshakable by the outside world, because we're not getting it from there. And we will have less of a fear of rejection. We'll have clear ideas for what we want in different areas of our lives. We won't settle for a career that gives us less than we deserve. We won't settle for a situation where we're in a relationship with somebody that doesn't actually fulfill us or meet our needs. So individuating is one of the most important parts of healing. And it really involves our ability to critically think by considering ourselves and learning who we are and what matters to us, and then making decisions that way from the inside out. And often people come into individuation through basically being broken down enough that they, by the outside world, that they stop looking to it to derive their sense of security from that space. But when we don't do that, or if we keep going back there anyways, we keep going to the outside world and their opinions without doing our own individual research about how that opinion applies to us in a unique way. When we don't do that, we will inevitably feel like we get let down, or there's just this lack of stability, or things are always changing. We'll have just more insecurity and challenges in that area of our lives. A couple other things about this. When you try to derive your sense of stability from the outside world in, it makes you easy to manipulate. And I don't mean that in like a disrespectful way to anybody. It's just like, if you are always looking to other people for your opinions, you're more likely to end up in relationships that gaslight you, in situations where you are being manipulated by a partner, perhaps, or somebody. And it's easy to fall into like harmful groupthink patterns that can be costly both to yourself and to other people. And I want to be really clear here too. Like you can be a really good person and still be individuated. Being a good person and being an obedient person are two different things. And I really believe that we should never teach children, for example, to be obedient. I know that that's the punishment reward system that people get raised in, but obedience, like if we look, right, and we're just being really honest, if we take a look at history and some of the most harmful events that ever happened in history, let's say an obedient person can end up in a harmful collective group think pattern. And that obedient person may do horrible, awful things in the name of obedience. Like if we look at history, we have examples of that where people were being obedient instead of questioning different narratives and different things that were happening. So they went with this sort of group think dynamic, and that could have actually caused a lot of harm. Now, this is not me saying that we shouldn't have rules and that rules don't have a place in society, because of course we should. But we should also be mindful that when we do anything or make any big decision in our lives, that we are deriving our sense of choice from the inside out. And unfortunately, the people who end up the most in painful, abusive, gaslighting relationships tend to be people who didn't learn to individuate first. And it's of no fault to them. It's usually a reflection of past trauma in their lives and in their experiences. But it's a harmful thing to have to go through, that you keep ending up in painful relationship after painful relationship. And again, there are versions of that in all of 7 areas of life. When we look at this idea and concept from an FA point of view, some people will experience that they are individuated more in certain areas of life than others. So for example, you might find that in relationships, you're super clear. You know your boundaries, you know your standards, you know your non-negotiables, but maybe in the physical health area of life, you haven't really decided like what diet works for me, what lifestyle choices work for me, what is the healthiest way I can choose to live my life as an individual. Maybe you've never looked at that. Maybe you just eat whatever, your family eats, but maybe your whole family is struggling with gut health issues or with who knows? There may be certain areas that we are more individuated in than others, right? Maybe in your mental area of life, you're really strong about your own viewpoints and opinions, though willing to question and take other people's viewpoints into consideration as well. But you're deriving your sense of views from the inside out. And maybe in the spiritual area of life, you don't do that. Maybe you just kind of like follow whatever beliefs you were taught in that area of life. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have bad beliefs or that everything is harmful if we haven't questioned them, but it means that we have to do our due diligence as a divine human being to really learn to take ourselves into consideration, to research, to explore, to form opinions for ourselves rather than simply accept them. And again, the positive consequences of this are that we don't ruminate and worry so much and be terrified of rejection and what people think and fear all of these different things, because we have a more sort of balanced, internalized sense of self from the inside out. So just some high level things here for fearful avoidance is that fearful avoidance may feel like it is unsafe to set boundaries. And they may experience, for example, a lot of guilt if they ever aren't people pleasing. And this can be the result of trauma they experienced in their childhood or upbringing. And then as a result of that trauma, they were like, oh, I can't set boundaries. And so that stops them from healthily individuating as a result. And that also makes them experience more guilt for not people pleasing or making a mistake. And again, just ideas like this, even like a fearful avoidant who has a core belief, like I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough, they may put other people in their lives more on a pedestal and then come to doubt their own opinions and viewpoints and favor other people's at the expense of actually making their own choices. So again, it'll be like, oh, this person knows what career I should be in, so I'm just going to go in that career because they're smarter than I am, or I'm not good enough to make my own decisions, or they know more than me. And again, nobody knows more than you about yourself. Okay. They can know more than you about other topics or high level things, but not about you and your personalized interaction with those topics and experiences. What I want you to think of is, as a fearful avoidant, where are the places that you haven't individuated very well right now? Where are the places you've never really done your own research for yourself? And again, we're looking specifically to the 7 areas of life. So in your career, in the financial area of life, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, relationships. So again, like financial area of life could be things like career is pretty obvious, but financial can be how you spend your money. Maybe people around you are like, hey, you should invest in this. And you're like, okay. But did you do your research? Did you decide what you want to invest in, what feels safe or right for you? Do you follow people's spending patterns that were programmed into you in your childhood? Did you just spend money how your parents spend money growing up and just follow in their footsteps? Or did you decide, no, 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 for me, money means security rather than freedom. And for me, money means I want to budget, I want to save, I want to put a certain amount of money away. Have you individuated there yet? Have you decided what's right for you and what you are looking for and what you want from your life? Again, let's go through the different areas: career, financial, mental. This can be your thoughts, opinions, beliefs, ideas, morals, values, these sorts of things. Have you taken time there to introspect? Is honesty important to you? Is trust important to you? Do you want to be somebody who lives at a high level of integrity? Like, what morals or values did you have? Did you just kind of accept whatever society has around you? Is society a really great representation of collective morality and value system at this point? Or do you want to kind of derive your own sense of morals and values there? Career, financial, mental, emotional, right? How do you emotionally regulate? How do you express emotion? Did you just follow in whoever's footsteps? Maybe you were raised by avoidant parents and they don't really express emotions much at all. And if they do, it's in an unhealthy way and you just kind of accepted those patterns. No, no, no. Who do you want to be? How do you want to show up in this area? And then when we get into the different emotions and the way you express them, like, do you want to, it's okay to feel angry. It's good to feel all emotions, but how we respond to our anger is healthy or unhealthy, right? So if I feel angry and I realize, oh, my boundary's violated, and I go healthily assert a boundary in a respectful way, anger was used in the healthy way. But if I followed whoever's footsteps and anger just meant explosive word vomit, onto each other, and I just took that on, we haven't individuated yet. We're just following programming. And by the way, when we look at different areas of our lives, right? We look at so many of the experiences that we have growing up. Like, of course, it's hard to individuate. We get taught, we get conditioned day in and day out, day after day, from the punishment reward system we get raised in, right? We get punished for doing things wrong, rewarded for doing things right. That creates a whole bunch of conditioning where we're like, oh my gosh, afraid to make a mistake, afraid to go against authority, afraid to question things, afraid to have our own opinions or boundaries or ideas. And then we go into the school system, which again, same thing, follows that same path. Again, I'm not saying that these things are bad, right? We have to be socialized into society for things to go around. But we don't want to just be a byproduct of our conditioning. We want to be able to observe our own conditioning with our conscious level of awareness, our conscious level of mind, observe what is working and not working, and be able to, from that point of view or perspective, decide how we want to respond to things, right? So you can decide, you know what, I like this part of how I was conditioned, and this part I'm not the biggest fan of. This part's like a little less healthy for me. So you want to be able to really make these decisions and see, who am I and who do I want to become, and what parts of my conditioning do I want to leave behind? Your conditioned mind is the subconscious, essentially, or what a lot of people refer to as the ego mind. And your conscious mind is your level of awareness, your ability to observe these things and make new logical choices and then pattern them back in to the subconscious mind. As we go through all the different layers here of the 7 areas of life, we did career, financial, mental, emotional, physical. This is another thing that's so interesting, is just like how many people just eat whatever people were eating around them, right? How does that feel for your body? Have you ever tried cutting out a whole bunch of foods and then reintroducing one thing at a time to see how your body responds, how you feel? Bob might say, hey, drink milk every day. Milk is healthy for you, because maybe Bob grew up like me with all the got milk campaigns and propaganda around milk, only to see later on that maybe milk's not so healthy. But when we see these different dynamics, right? Maybe I'm drinking milk every day, but I'm like struggling with lactose intolerance or something. Like, we have to be able to make our own individual decisions there, and how we live and how we sleep and just everything. Like, so many parts of our physical health matter and have such an impact over us too, that if we're just, going on autopilot and just responding to whatever's in front of us, like, that may have long-term consequences. And then spiritual, right? Sometimes somebody gets raised in a certain way of looking at things, a certain religion or things like that. And I think that spiritual is a very important part of life. And so while we want to be in a position where we want to sort of nourish that avenue of life in whatever way that looks to you, even if that just looks like you living and choosing to live by high moral standards, and for you, that's what spirituality means, we want to just question things. What works for us and what doesn't from the things we're learning and taking in. And then relationships. Are you just picking people that remind you of your comfort zone, of what's familiar to you? Or are you choosing to show up in relationships with a different level of standards, thoughtfulness, know what your non-negotiables are, and really individuate from that perspective? So I know this is a very long video, but I just felt it was very important to discuss. So fearful avoidance, you want to ideally look at the different limiting beliefs you have that are preventing you from being able to do a deep dive into this. What sort of ideas do you have? Do you think it's unsafe to set boundaries? I'm going to be bad if I set boundaries. I'm not good enough to make my own decisions. Like, do you have that? And in which areas of life? And what are you afraid will happen if you start sort of setting those boundaries and making those choices from the inside out? And as a byproduct of doing this, we will learn to self-trust. And it's actually one of the biggest things that fearful avoidants have to learn to do, from the perspective of being able to develop a healthy sense of trust within, instead of feeling like they've lost touch with their intuition. They don't know if they're gaslighting themselves or not. They might be at the mercy of potentially being gaslit by different experiences around them. So while we can outsource certain decisions, right? Like, we may not want to make a decision about, what part of a country to travel to, or, things like that might be less, like, they carry less weight. When it comes to big decisions that massively affect all of those 7 areas of life, it's important to learn to take yourself into consideration and learn who you are and make those choices from the inside out. I just wanted to pop in here and let you know we are doing a 7-day free trial to the All Access Membership Pass at PDS, which means you get access to literally everything inside of the school. And this includes the 4 live webinars I do with our students every single week. And on top of that, you get access to all of our different courses. We have over 55 different courses on relationships, communication, boundaries, emotional mastery, guilt and shame, learning your needs, so many different facets that are really important to master our lives and feel really good about our lives going forward. And last but not least, there's a daily community event. We have trained facilitators and coaches who are in there doing that work, showing up to support you on your journey every single day. And along with that, you actually get to keep as a gift for free for life access to our codependency course that will help you rewire your codependent patterns at the root, leveraging neuroscience and helping you change the limiting beliefs that are holding you back and keeping you burnt out, so you can feel recharged, be in reciprocal relationships, and actually start connecting to people in an entirely new way. Click the link below to get started today. I just want you to take a look at, like, where am I struggling to individuate? Which areas of life? What are the fears I have around individuating? Sometimes it's that we just don't know enough yet about that area. So we have to research a little bit. We have to do our due diligence to figure out who we are in that area of life. But the more that we do, the more we will feel like we have a strong sense of self. It's developed from the inside out. We've got a healthy relationship to that area of our lives. We're not people pleasing as much. We're not gaslighting ourselves. We're not breaking our own trust. We feel empowered setting boundaries. We're not afraid of rejection. Like, so many great things come of this. That's it for today. I hope this made sense. Thank you so much for watching and for being here. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.